I'm Madison Taylor, 22, and fashion design has been my passion since forever. Last spring, our family's annual charity ball was supposed to be my moment to shine with a gown I'd poured my heart into for months. Then the morning of the event, I found my creation soaked in red wine. My sister Rebecca stood there with that familiar fake apologetic smile. It was an accident, she claimed. But this time, her sabotage wouldn't break me. I had exactly 14 hours to pull off the impossible. Let me tell you how I turned disaster into the night that launched my career. Before I dive in, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to rise from someone else's sabotage. Growing up in the Taylor family meant living in a world where appearances mattered more than authenticity. Our sprawling Boston suburban home hosted dinner parties for the city's elite, while hiding the emotional complications that simmered beneath our perfect family portrait. My parents, Eleanor and Richard Taylor, built their wealth in real estate development, but their true expertise was in developing an image of success rather than genuine connections. From an early age, I knew I was different from what my parents expected. While they steered conversations toward business schools and corporate internships, I spent hours sketching designs in notebooks, draping fabric scraps over my dolls, and transforming thrift store finds into unique pieces. My room became a makeshift studio, much to my mother's dismay when important guests came to visit. "Madison, darling, couldn't you pursue something more substantial?" Mom would say, her voice soft but disappointment evident. "Fashion is such a difficult industry to succeed in." Dad was more direct. "You'll never make real money drawing pictures of dresses. The family business is where your future lies." But the real complication in our family wasn't my parents' expectations. It was my older sister Rebecca, 5 years my senior at 27. Rebecca had always been the perfect daughter on paper. She'd majored in business, joined our father's company, and moved through the same social circles my parents valued. Yet beneath her polished exterior lurked a perpetual insecurity that manifested as hostility toward me. The pattern started early. When I was 10, I spent weeks creating an elaborate mixed-media art project for the school exhibition. My art teacher had raved about my talent, and for once, my parents seemed interested in something I'd created. The morning of the exhibition, I found my project accidentally doused with water, the colors bleeding together into an unrecognizable mess. "Rebecca was just trying to help you move it," Mom explained, while Rebecca nodded with wide-eyed innocence. "You shouldn't have left it where someone could bump into it." The incidents continued as we grew older. During my senior year of high school, Rebecca accidentally deleted my college application essay from the family computer the night before the submission deadline. I stayed up all night rewriting it, fueled by rage and determination. The most devastating sabotage came when Rebecca lost my portfolio right before my interview at Parsons School of Design. I'd spent months curating my best work, but the leather case containing everything disappeared from our home just days before my appointment. I showed up with a hastily assembled collection of backup sketches and photographs. Miraculously, I still got accepted, though with no scholarship offers that might have come with my complete portfolio. Each time something happened, my parents followed the same script. "Rebecca would never do something like that on purpose. You know how forgetful she can be, or you're being too sensitive." It wasn't intentional. After years of gaslighting, I began to doubt my own perceptions. Maybe Rebecca was just clumsy and forgetful. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew the truth. Especially when I'd catch her satisfied smirk when no one else was looking. Despite everything, I thrived at design school. I kept my best work away from home, stored safely with my best friend Jasmine, whose apartment became my creative sanctuary. I learned to navigate family events with polite distance, sharing minimal details about my projects and achievements. The real breakthrough came 3 months ago when I landed an internship at Ellington House, a prestigious fashion atelier known for their impeccable craftsmanship and innovative designs. The position was fiercely competitive, hundreds of applicants for just 2 spots. When I called home with the news, my father's response was predictably lukewarm. "That's nice, sweetheart. Is it paid at least?" Rebecca's reaction was worse. "Aren't internships just glorified coffee runs? Don't get your hopes up about it leading to anything." But the internship exceeded all my expectations. Under the mentorship of Diana Ellington herself, I was learning techniques that transcended anything taught in school. Diana recognized something in me that my family never had: genuine talent and vision. When the invitation arrived for the annual Winchester Foundation Charity Ball, the social event of the season in Boston's elite circles, I saw an opportunity. For years, I'd attended wearing whatever conservative dress my mother deemed appropriate. This year would be different. I would design and create my own gown, something that showcased my aesthetic and technical skills. Are you sure that's wise? My mother asked when I shared my plans. There will be important people there. What if your dress doesn't look professional? That's exactly why I'm doing it, Mom, I replied. Those important people include fashion industry leaders I'd like to impress. What I didn't say was that the dress represented something deeper, a declaration of independence from my family's narrow expectations and my sister's subtle sabotage. It would be my emergence as a designer in my own right, in a world where my family name might open doors, but my talent would have to speak for itself. Little did I know that this dress would become the catalyst for the most dramatic confrontation with Rebecca yet, and ultimately my greatest triumph. The moment I decided to create my own gown for the charity ball, something shifted inside me. This wouldn't just be another student project, it would be my debut. My statement piece in a room full of people who could influence my future. I claimed a corner of my small apartment as a dedicated workspace and began the process that would consume the next 3 months of my life. The design phase started with inspiration boards, photographs of vintage couture, architectural elements from Art Nouveau buildings, and the fluid movement of ballet dancers. I wanted something that combined structural elements with ethereal movement, sophistication with unexpected details. After filling sketchbook after sketchbook with iterations, I finally created the design that made my heart race, a midnight blue gown with a structured bodice that flowed into layers of gossamer silk, with hand-beaded constellations that would catch the light as I moved. This is ambitious, Diana commented when I nervously showed her my sketches during a lunch break at my internship. But if anyone in your cohort can pull it off, it's you. The beadwork alone will take weeks. She was right about the timeline. Finding the perfect fabrics meant a weekend trip to New York's garment district, where I spent hours feeling the drape and weight of different silks until I found the perfect midnight blue that shifted between indigo and purple under different lights. The beads were another search entirely. I needed specific Austrian crystals and Japanese glass beads that would create the celestial effect I envisioned. Every evening after classes or my internship, I worked on the dress. The bodice required a precise internal structure to support the design without compromising comfort. I constructed and reconstructed the boning 3 times before I was satisfied. The silk layers had to be cut on the bias at exact angles to achieve the fluid movement I wanted when walking. Each panel was a technical challenge that I tackled with growing confidence. The beadwork was the most meditative part of the process. For weeks I sat hunched over the fabric, sewing each tiny bead in place to create constellations that subtly represented meaningful moments in my life. The Big Dipper near the right shoulder for night stargazing with my grandfather, who'd always encouraged my creativity. Orion's belt along the hip as a nod to my childhood bedroom ceiling where glow-in-the-dark stars had been arranged in that pattern. The work was painstaking, but watching the night sky emerge on fabric brought me profound satisfaction. As the dress took shape on my dress form, friends from design school started dropping by to watch its progress. Their genuine excitement fueled my determination during moments of fatigue. "Madison, this is museum-quality work," my classmate Tyler said, examining the beading detail. "You're going to make everyone at that stuffy ball lose their minds." My friend Jasmine was more direct. "Girl, you're about to put some very expensive designer gowns to shame. Your sister is going to be green with envy." The mention of Rebecca cast a slight shadow over my excitement. I'd been so absorbed in my creative process that I'd managed to avoid thinking about her potential reaction. The few times I'd been home for family dinners in recent months, I'd kept conversation about the dress vague and minimal, mentioning only that I was working on something for the ball. Rebecca's interest had seemed casual at first. "So you're making your own dress? How crafty. I hope it doesn't look homemade." As the weeks progressed and the ball drew closer, her comments took on a sharper edge. "The Winchester Ball isn't a student fashion show, Madison," she remarked during Sunday brunch. "Mother says the Whitmore family is bringing potential investors for Dad. I hope your little project doesn't distract from that." I chose to ignore her thinly veiled criticisms, but I couldn't ignore the strange occurrences in my workspace. After a weekend at Jasmine's, I returned to find my carefully arranged beads slightly out of order. Another time, my sketchbook was on a different shelf than where I'd left it. Nothing was damaged or missing, just slightly disturbed, as if someone had been examining my work. When I mentioned these oddities to Jasmine, she immediately suspected Rebecca. Does she have a key to your place? No, but our building manager is friends with my parents. She could easily have talked her way in. The next time I saw Rebecca at a family dinner, I carefully mentioned that some things seemed moved in my apartment. How would I know anything about that? She responded with a dismissive laugh. Some of us have actual careers to manage, not arts and crafts projects to obsess over. Our mother quickly changed the subject, her standard response to any hint of tension between us. The week before the ball, the dress was nearly complete. The final fittings with Jasmine's help confirmed that the bodice fit perfectly, the skirt moved exactly as I'd envisioned, and the beadwork caught the light in a way that created the illusion of actual stars twinkling across the fabric. All that remained were final touches, securing the invisible closures, adding the last few beads to complete the celestial pattern, and a final press. The night before the ball, I worked until midnight making these last adjustments. Exhausted but deeply satisfied, I carefully placed the finished gown on my best mannequin, positioning it to catch the morning light so I could take proper photographs before wearing it. As I turned off the lights in my workspace, I felt a surge of pride unlike anything I'd experienced before. This creation represented not just my technical skills, but my resilience, my vision, and my determination to forge my own path despite years of subtle undermining. I fell asleep that night with a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. In less than 24 hours, I would wear my creation into a room full of Boston's elite, standing tall as the designer I was becoming, not just Richard and Eleanor Taylor's younger daughter who had that artistic hobby. I had no idea that the morning would bring a disaster that would test my resilience more dramatically than any challenge I'd faced before. The next morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the evening's festivities. I woke early, energized despite my late night. After making a strong cup of coffee, I headed to my workspace, eager to see my creation in the morning light and take photographs for my portfolio before preparing for the ball. The moment I opened the door to my studio space, I knew something was wrong. There was a scent in the air, the unmistakable smell of wine. My heart began to race as I moved toward the mannequin where my dress had been displayed. The sight that greeted me stopped me cold. My beautiful midnight blue creation, the gown I'd poured hundreds of hours into, was soaked with deep red liquid that had saturated the bodice and dripped down onto the skirt. The red wine, because that's unmistakably what it was, had already dried in places, leaving dark burgundy stains across the delicate silk. The beadwork I'd so painstakingly created now hung in a sad, stained tapestry against the ruined fabric. No, 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 I whispered, reaching out with trembling hands before pulling back, afraid to make it worse. This can't be happening. The room spun around me as I sank to the floor. 3 months of work, countless hours of detailed beading, my debut as a designer all destroyed. The worst part was knowing immediately that this was no accident. Someone had deliberately poured wine on my dress, positioned to ensure maximum damage to both the bodice and skirt. And I knew exactly who that someone was. Through tears I called Jasmine, barely able to form coherent sentences. Jazz, my dress, it's ruined. Someone poured wine all over it. What? Madison. Slow down. What happened? The dress is destroyed, I managed between sobs. Red wine. Everywhere. It had to be Rebecca. No one else would do this. I'm coming over right now, Jasmine said, her voice tight with anger. Don't touch anything. If your sister did this, there might be evidence. While waiting for Jasmine, I called home, my grief rapidly transforming into rage. Our housekeeper answered and informed me that Rebecca had indeed gone out early that morning, claiming she wanted to surprise Madison with coffee and check on her dress. My mother took the phone, alarmed by what the housekeeper had overheard. Madison? What's going on? My dress is ruined, Mom. Someone poured red wine all over it. Rebecca was here this morning. Did she come back to the house yet? She just walked in, actually. Hold on. I heard muffled conversation, and then Rebecca came on the line, her voice perfectly calibrated to convey shock and regret. Madison, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to see your dress. You've been so secretive about it. I brought coffee and was looking at it, and I must have accidentally bumped the mannequin. My wine from last night was still on your side table and it tipped over. I tried to clean it up, but it seemed to make it worse. So I thought I should let you handle it. I was going to call you. You brought wine to my apartment at 7 in the morning? I interrupted, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. No, I mean, the wine was there from last night. I assumed it was yours. I don't drink red wine, Rebecca. You know that. I get migraines from it. A pause. Well, perhaps one of your friends left it. Stop lying, I cut her off. You've been trying to sabotage me my entire life, but this is a new low. That dress represented my future. Madison. You're being dramatic. It was an accident. Besides, you can just buy something today. I'll even help you shop. I hung up, unable to bear another second of her manufactured innocence. When Jasmine arrived 15 minutes later, she found me still sitting on the floor, surrounded by the ruins of my dreams. Oh my God, she gasped, seeing the dress. Madison, I'm so sorry. Together, we assessed the damage. The wine had penetrated deep into the fibers of the silk. The bodice, with its complex construction, was beyond saving. Some of the beadwork could potentially be salvaged, but there was no way to reconstruct the dress in the few hours remaining before the ball. I'm not going, I decided, wiping away tears. I can't face everyone like this. Rebecca wins. Again. Like hell she does, Jasmine snapped. We're not letting her get away with this. My phone rang again, my mother this time. Her voice placating. Darling, Rebecca feels terrible about the accident. These things happen. Perhaps it's a sign you should leave fashion design to the professionals and focus on something more suited to your abilities. Anyway, I've already called Neiman Marcus. They're setting aside some options in your size. Your father will cover the cost, of course. The familiar dismissal of both my talent and Rebecca's culpability ignited something in me. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Jasmine answered it to find Rebecca herself standing there, holding a shopping bag from an expensive boutique. I brought options, she announced. Sweeping past Jasmine without waiting for an invitation. She stopped short when she saw me on the floor beside the ruined dress. For just a moment. Something like satisfaction flickered across her face before she composed her features into a mask of concern. Oh, Madison, it looks even worse than I thought. Thank goodness I brought these. She pulled out a black cocktail dress from the bag. Conservative, boring, and nothing like what I would have chosen. This should work for tonight. I stood up slowly, finding a calm I didn't know I possessed. Thank you for your concern, Rebecca, but I'll handle this myself. Don't be stubborn. The ball is in 8 hours. What else can you possibly do? That's for me to figure out. You can go now. Rebecca's expression hardened slightly. Mom and Dad are expecting both of us tonight. The Whitmores will be there with potential investors for Dad's new development. Your tantrum over a ruined dress won't look good for the family. I said you can go. After Rebecca left, Jasmine put her hands on my shoulders. What are you thinking? I don't know yet. But I'm done being her victim. As if the universe wanted to confirm my suspicions about Rebecca. My neighbor Audrey knocked on my door shortly after. Madison, I think you should know, I overheard your sister on her phone in the hallway just now. She was telling someone that she finally taught Madison a lesson about staying in her lane. I don't know what happened, but it didn't sound like she was talking about an accident. Something shifted inside me at those words. The grief and shock crystallized into determination. Rebecca had finally gone too far, and this time I wouldn't just quietly rebuild in the shadows. This time I would rise from the ashes in a way that no one, especially Rebecca, would expect. Jasmine, I said, a plan beginning to form. Call everyone from our design cohort. We need an emergency meeting. And I need to reach Diana at Ellington House. For the first time since discovering the ruined dress, I felt a spark of hope. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Within an hour, my small apartment had transformed into a crisis headquarters. 5 friends from my design program arrived, assessed the situation, and immediately began brainstorming solutions. The ruined dress lay across my work table like a fallen soldier, a reminder of what we were fighting to overcome. We could try to overdye it black? Suggested Tyler, examining the wine stains with a professional eye. Not enough time for the fabric to properly absorb and dry, said May, shaking her head. And the beadwork would need to be completely removed and reattached. What about deconstructing the non-stained portions and creating something smaller? Offered Jasmine. I appreciated their efforts, but I knew that trying to salvage the dress would only result in a compromised design, a physical reminder of Rebecca's sabotage. I needed something completely different. Something that would make an even stronger statement than my original creation. I've called Diana, I announced. She's going to meet us at Ellington House in an hour. She said she might have a solution. Diana Ellington had been my mentor at the fashion house for 3 months. Though normally reserved with interns, she had taken a special interest in my work, occasionally inviting me to observe fittings with high-profile clients or review fabric selections for upcoming collections. Her call had given me the first real hope since discovering the disaster. "Let's go," Jasmine said, grabbing her car keys. "The rest of you see if you can salvage any of the beadwork from the dress. We might be able to incorporate elements into whatever new plan we develop." The drive to Ellington House in downtown Boston took 30 minutes through midday traffic. I spent the time alternating between anxious silence and explaining the full history of Rebecca's sabotage to Jasmine. After all these years, I still don't understand why she feels so threatened by me, I said, staring out the window. She has everything: the family approval, the proper career, the social connections. Why can't she just let me have this one thing? Because you have the one thing she doesn't, Jasmine replied. Genuine talent and passion. She's living the life your parents prescribed. But you're creating your own. That's threatening to someone who's never had the courage to follow their own path. Diana was waiting at the private entrance to Ellington House when we arrived. Normally the picture of cool professionalism, today her expression showed genuine concern. "Madison, I'm so sorry about your dress. You showed me the sketches, it was going to be extraordinary." She led us through the back corridors of the atelier to her private office. "I've been thinking about solutions, and I have a rather unorthodox suggestion." She pulled out her phone and showed us a contact. François Beaumont. He's an old friend and an exceptional designer with his own boutique in Back Bay. He specializes in evening wear and has a private collection of sample pieces from his upcoming line. If anyone might have something that could work on short notice, it's François. Would he even see me? I asked, hope battling with doubt. "The ball is tonight." "I've already called him," Diana said with a small smile. "He's expecting us in 30 minutes. I told him about your situation and your talent. He's intrigued." François Beaumont's boutique occupied a converted brownstone on one of Boston's most exclusive streets. The minimalist exterior gave little hint of the treasures within. François himself greeted us at the door. A tall, elegant man in his 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp, appraising eyes. "Diana, ma chérie," he said, kissing her cheeks before turning to me with undisguised curiosity. "And you must be Madison Taylor. Diana speaks very highly of your potential." "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice, Mr. Beaumont," I said, trying to project confidence despite my emotional exhaustion. "François, please." Diana explained your predicament. "A deliberate act of sabotage, non? Family can be the cruelest critics." His perceptiveness was startling. "Before we discuss solutions, I'd like to see your work. Diana says you're exceptional." I hesitated, then pulled out my portfolio tablet, opening it to images of my designs, including sketches of the ruined gown and in-progress photographs. François studied them with intense focus, occasionally making small sounds of approval. When he looked up, his expression had transformed from polite interest to genuine engagement. "You have a unique perspective. The structural elements balanced with movement, very sophisticated for someone so young." He handed back my tablet. "I think I may have something that would suit your aesthetic. Follow me." He led us to a hidden staircase that descended to a lower level of the boutique. There, in a temperature-controlled room behind glass doors, hung a collection unlike anything I'd seen before. Each piece was more breathtaking than the last, gowns that pushed the boundaries between fashion and art. "These are from my upcoming autumn collection, not yet revealed to the public," François explained, unlocking the glass doors. Normally, they wouldn't leave this room until the official presentation next month, but for Diana's protégé, I might make an exception. He moved through the collection with purpose, occasionally glancing back at me as if measuring something in his mind. Finally, he stopped before a gown that made me catch my breath. The dress was a masterpiece of deep emerald silk that shifted to midnight blue in certain lights, creating an almost otherworldly effect. The construction was revolutionary, a bodice that appeared to float on the body, connected by nearly invisible mesh with crystalline beading that created the illusion of stars suspended in space. The skirt flowed in graduated panels that would move like water when walking. "This is my personal favorite from the collection," François said, carefully removing it from the rack. "Inspired by the northern lights, the point where the stars meet the earth." "It's incredible," I whispered, almost afraid to touch it. "Try it on," he said, handing it to me with surprising casualness for something that likely cost more than a year's rent. The private dressing room was a sanctuary of soft lighting and plush carpet. As Jasmine helped me into the gown, I felt a transformation beginning. The fabric settled against my skin like it had been created for me. The weight and balance immediately familiar yet entirely different from anything I'd worn before. When I stepped out, Diana and François both fell silent. François circled me slowly, his designer's eye assessing every detail. "The proportions are nearly perfect," he murmured. "We would need minor adjustments at the shoulder and hem, nothing my team cannot accomplish in a few hours." "It's magnificent on you," Diana added. "Better than I could have imagined." For the first time since discovering my ruined dress, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of excitement. This gown wasn't just a replacement, it was an elevation. A statement piece that would declare my artistic sensibilities more boldly than even my original design. "I couldn't possibly afford this," I said reluctantly, reality intruding on the moment. "Something like this must cost 20,000 retail," François confirmed casually. "But that's not what we're discussing." My heart sank. Even with my parents' offer to buy a replacement, there was no way they would spend that kind of money on a dress. François studied me for a moment longer, then made a decisive gesture. "I have a proposition. Diana tells me you have exceptional promise as a designer. I'd like to see that promise developed." He turned to Diana. "You were planning to offer her an extended apprenticeship after graduation?" "Yes." Diana nodded. "Madison has been our most impressive intern in years." "Then here's my offer," François continued, turning back to me. "You may borrow this gown for the evening, a temporary loan. In exchange, when you complete your current internship with Diana, you'll spend 6 months apprenticing with me as well. I need someone with fresh perspective for my spring collection, and I think you might provide that." I stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to work with you? Based just on my portfolio?" "And Diana's recommendation, which carries significant weight. Do we have an agreement?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." "Excellent. Now let's get you fitted properly. We have only a few hours to create your transformation." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of precise adjustments, with François' team working with incredible efficiency. The alterations were subtle but essential, adjusting the bodice to fit my proportions exactly, shortening the hem to accommodate my height, and adding hidden supports to ensure the architectural elements of the dress maintained their form throughout the evening. As they worked, François shared insights about his design process, the construction techniques that made the dress's seemingly impossible structure functional, and his philosophy about creating garments that transformed the wearer. I absorbed every word, aware that this disaster had somehow turned into a masterclass with one of the industry's most innovative designers. By late afternoon, the alterations were complete. The final fitting revealed a gown that looked as if it had been designed specifically for me, the colors complementing my skin tone, the structure highlighting my posture and movement. The overall effect both sophisticated and slightly otherworldly. "Perfect," François declared. "Now there are specific undergarments and accessories required for this design to function properly. Camille will prepare everything for you." His assistant appeared with a specialized garment bag and a box containing engineered shapewear, specific jewelry designed to complement the gown, and evening shoes dyed to match the exact color gradient of the dress. "Remember, this is not just a dress. It's a complete artistic statement," François instructed as we prepared to leave. "The way you carry yourself in it is as important as the garment itself. Stand tall. You are wearing wearable art." As we left the boutique, the sun was beginning to set. The charity ball would begin in less than 3 hours, and I still needed to complete hair and makeup. But for the first time since the morning's disaster, I felt centered and confident. "Madison," Diana said as we reached the car, "you realize what just happened, don't you? François Beaumont never takes apprentices outside of graduates from top European design schools. This opportunity is extraordinary." I know, I replied, carefully placing the garment bag across the back seat. It's strange to think that without Rebecca's sabotage, none of this would have happened. Sometimes our worst moments lead to our greatest opportunities, Diana said. Just promise me one thing. Take a photo of your sister's face when you walk in wearing a Beaumont original. I laughed, feeling the weight of the day lifting slightly. That's definitely part of the plan. With the dress secured, Jasmine drove us directly to her apartment instead of returning to mine. Your place feels contaminated by Rebecca's negativity, she declared. Besides, my bathroom has better lighting for makeup. We had exactly 2 hours before the ball officially began. Normally, I would have been getting ready with my family, enduring my mother's well-intentioned but undermining suggestions about my appearance while Rebecca monopolized the best mirror. The thought of preparing separately felt like another small victory. I've texted the others to meet us here, Jasmine said as we entered her apartment. Tyler's bringing his makeup kit. He did that editorial shoot last month, remember? And May is coming to help with your hair. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Where are you? We're supposed to leave in an hour. Your father is already annoyed about being late. I replied simply, making alternate arrangements. We'll meet you there. Another buzz. Madison, don't be difficult. Rebecca feels terrible about the accident. We need to present a united family front for the Whitmores. I put my phone on silent and placed it face down on Jasmine's coffee table. Tonight wasn't about the Whitmores or my family's business connections. It was about reclaiming my identity as a designer and standing up to years of subtle undermining. Tyler arrived first, rolling in a professional makeup case. Darling, I heard there was an emergency transformation needed. I've brought reinforcements. May followed shortly after with a bag of hair tools and a determined expression. I've been studying architectural hair structures. I have ideas that will complement François' design aesthetic. As they set up a makeshift glam station in Jasmine's living room, I felt a surge of gratitude for these friends who had dropped everything to help me. In 3 years of design school, we'd pulled all-nighters together, critiqued each other's work honestly but kindly, and celebrated each small victory. They understood what tonight meant to me in a way my family never could. Have you decided how you're going to handle Rebecca when you see her? Tyler asked as he began applying primer to my face. I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. Part of me wants to publicly call her out for what she did. While that would be satisfying, May said, sectioning my hair, it might undermine your bigger triumph. The best revenge might be simply outshining her so completely that everyone sees the contrast between you. As they worked, my phone continued to light up with texts from both my mother and Rebecca. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the transformation taking place. Tyler created a makeup look that complemented the ethereal quality of the dress without overpowering it. Luminous skin, subtle dimension around the eyes that enhanced their color, and a lip stain that would last through the evening. May constructed a hair design that echoed the architectural elements of the gown, an asymmetrical updo with structural components that somehow managed to look both modern and effortless. Small, crystal-studded pins that matched the dress's beading were placed strategically throughout. François' assistant just texted, Jasmine announced. She's on her way with the final accessories and the dress. My stomach tightened with both excitement and anxiety. The reality of what I was about to do, walk into Boston's most prestigious social event wearing a design from an unreleased collection by one of fashion's most exclusive designers, was finally hitting me. What if I trip? Or spill something on it? I worried aloud. You won't, Jasmine said firmly. But even if something did happen, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Today has already proven that. Hasn't it? She was right. 12 hours ago, I'd been devastated by the destruction of my own creation. Now I was about to wear something even more extraordinary, with an apprenticeship opportunity that exceeded my wildest ambitions. Perhaps there was a lesson in that reversal of fortune, that sometimes our carefully constructed plans need to fall apart for something better to take their place. François' assistant Camille arrived with a reverence for the garment that bordered on religious. She carefully laid out the dress, the specialized undergarments, and the accessories on Jasmine's bed, explaining each component in detail. The foundation garment is essential, she instructed. It provides the structure that allows the bodice to appear to float. The shoes have been balanced specifically for the weight and movement of the skirt. And these, she opened a velvet box containing delicate ear cuffs that mimicked the constellation pattern in the dress, complete the artistic vision. With Jasmine's help, I stepped into the foundation garment first, then the dress itself. The weight of it settled differently than it had in the boutique, more balanced, more integrated with my body's movements. When Camille fastened the final hook and stepped back, the room fell silent. "Madison," Jasmine whispered, "you look like you stepped out of another dimension." Tyler pulled out his phone and took a photo, then turned it to show me. The person in the image barely resembled the tearful, devastated girl from this morning. Instead, I saw someone confident, almost regal, wearing a creation that seemed to embody both night sky and ocean depths. "This is how you'll be remembered after tonight," Tyler said. "Not as the girl whose sister ruined her dress, but as the woman who showed up in Beaumont and stole the show." The confidence boost was short-lived as my anxiety returned full force. In less than an hour I would face my family, including Rebecca. How would I handle the inevitable confrontation? What would I say when people asked about the extraordinary gown? Should I expose Rebecca's deliberate sabotage or take the high road? "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted, my voice small. "Face all those people, face Rebecca." "Listen to me," Jasmine said, taking my hands carefully to avoid disturbing the dress. "You've been preparing for this moment your entire life. Not the dress, though it's spectacular, but the moment when you finally stand up and refuse to be diminished. Rebecca has been stealing your light for years, and you've let her because it seemed easier than fighting back. Tonight, you're reclaiming your power. But what do I say to her? To my parents? You say nothing about the incident unless directly asked, may suggest it. Let the contrast between her pettiness and your triumph speak for itself. And if anyone asks about the dress?" I wondered. "The truth," Tyler said simply. "You're wearing François Beaumont, who recognized your talent and offered you an apprenticeship. No need to mention the circumstances unless you want to." A car horn sounded outside. The driver François had arranged to transport me safely in the elaborate gown. "It's time," Camille said, helping me gather the specialized garment bag for after the event. As my friends helped me navigate the stairs carefully, Jasmine whispered, "Remember who you are. Not Richard and Eleanor's daughter or Rebecca's sister, but Madison Taylor, designer and artist. Walk in there like you own the place." The town car was spacious enough to accommodate the dress without crushing it. As we pulled away from Jasmine's apartment, I watched my friends waving encouragement through the window and felt a curious calm settle over me. Whatever happened tonight, I had people in my corner who valued me for exactly who I was. The drive to the historic Fairmont Copley Plaza Hotel, where the Winchester Foundation held their annual charity ball, took 20 minutes through Boston's evening traffic. I used the time to center myself, mentally rehearsing how I would handle various scenarios with Rebecca and my parents. As the car pulled up to the grand entrance, I could see photographers documenting the arrivals of Boston's elite. Normally, I would have arrived with my family, barely noticed as we moved through the entrance. Tonight would be different. The driver opened my door, and I carefully emerged, the dress catching the light of the plaza's grand chandeliers visible through the hotel's windows. A few heads turned immediately. I took a deep breath, thanked the driver, and began ascending the steps toward the entrance, feeling the weight of what awaited me inside. The Fairmont Copley Plaza's grand ballroom had been transformed for the Winchester Foundation event, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in midnight blue linens. A string quartet played in one corner, their music providing a sophisticated backdrop to the hum of conversation. The event was in full swing when I arrived, deliberately timed to ensure maximum visibility. As I paused at the entrance, gathering courage, the maitre d' approached with a clipboard. "Your name, miss?" "Madison Taylor," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. His eyes widened slightly as he checked the list. "Ah yes. The Taylor family is seated at table 14 near the center. They've been asking after you." "Thank you," I said, taking a deep breath before stepping fully into the ballroom. The effect was immediate and exactly as François had predicted. Conversations nearest the door paused mid-sentence as heads turned. The dress commanded attention, the play of light across the specialized fabric created an impression of movement even when I stood still. I heard someone whisper, "Is that Beaumont's new collection?" and felt a surge of confidence. I spotted my family's table easily. My father's distinguished silver hair and my mother's perfect posture were familiar landmarks at these events. Rebecca sat beside them in a conservative black gown, leaning forward in animated conversation with the Whitmore's son Bradley. None of them had noticed my arrival yet. With deliberate grace, I began moving through the room, navigating between tables with the careful movement François had coached me on. The specialized construction of the dress created a fluid motion that made it appear as if I were gliding rather than walking. More conversation stuttered to a halt as I passed. I nodded politely to familiar faces, including several of my parents' business associates who regarded me with new interest. I was halfway to my family's table when Rebecca finally looked up. The transformation on her face was worth every moment of the day's trauma. Her expression shifting from casual disinterest to shock, followed by confusion and finally unmistakable dismay. She nudged our mother, whose practiced social smile froze when she saw me. My father was the last to notice, turning with irritation at my mother's sudden silence. His eyes widened, and for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I saw genuine surprise on Richard Taylor's face. I completed my approach to the table with unhurried confidence, stopping directly across from Rebecca. "Good evening," I said simply. "I apologize for being late." For several seconds, no one at the table spoke. Bradley Whitmore recovered first, standing quickly. "Madison, you look absolutely stunning. That dress is extraordinary." "Thank you, Bradley," I replied, accepting his offered chair with a careful adjustment of the gown skirt. My mother found her voice next, leaning forward to whisper urgently, "Madison, what are you wearing? We expected you hours ago." "Your father had to make excuses." "I had an unexpected situation with my original dress," I said evenly, meeting Rebecca's gaze directly for the first time. "Fortunately, I was able to find an alternative." Rebecca's face had paled slightly beneath her makeup. "It's quite a statement piece," she managed, her tone suggesting she wasn't offering a compliment. "François Beaumont thinks so," I replied casually. "It's from his upcoming autumn collection. He was kind enough to loan it to me personally." The name drop had its intended effect. My mother's criticism transformed instantly to astonishment. "François Beaumont? How on earth did you?" "Through my connections at Ellington House," I explained, accepting a glass of water from a passing server. Diana made the introduction. My father, never particularly interested in fashion, nevertheless recognized the significance of the designer's name. "Isn't he the one who designed for that princess last year? The wedding dress that was on all the magazine covers." "The same," I confirmed. "He's quite selective about who wears his designs." Rebecca's discomfort was growing visibly. "How fortunate that you found a replacement so quickly after this morning's accident." I held her gaze steadily. "Yes, wasn't it? Almost as if everything happens for a reason." The veiled reference to her deliberate sabotage wasn't lost on Rebecca, whose eyes darted away guiltily. Before she could respond, we were interrupted by the arrival of an elegant older man who approached our table with purpose. "Madison Taylor," he said warmly. "What a pleasure to see my design making such an impression." Every head at the table turned toward François Beaumont, who had arrived at the ball as Diana had mentioned he might, as a donor to the Winchester Foundation. "Mr. Beaumont," my mother said, instantly switching to her most charming social voice. "What an unexpected pleasure. I see you've already met our daughter." "Indeed," François replied, his attention remaining on me rather than my mother, a social slight that would not go unnoticed. "Madison's talent is extraordinary. When Diana Ellington introduced us today, I was immediately impressed by her portfolio. Such vision in one so young is rare." Rebecca shifted uncomfortably in her seat as François continued. "The gown she designed originally was quite remarkable. When I heard about its unfortunate destruction, I knew immediately that she would be perfect for my newest piece. The artistic sensibility required to wear it successfully is uncommon." My father, always alert to business opportunities, engaged immediately. "We've always supported Madison's creative interests. Of course, perhaps we could discuss her future over drinks sometime." "That won't be necessary," François replied smoothly. "Madison and I have already discussed her future. She'll be joining my atelier as an apprentice after completing her current position with Diana." Quite a coup. I rarely take apprentices from American design schools. The expressions around the table were priceless, my mother's social mask slipping to reveal genuine shock, my father reassessing me with new consideration, and Rebecca looking as though she'd swallowed something bitter. If you'll excuse us, François continued, there are several people in the industry I'd like Madison to meet this evening. With your permission, of course, he added, with just enough deference to maintain social protocol. My parents could hardly object to such an opportunity. As I rose carefully from my seat, François offered his arm with old-world courtesy. We won't be long. Family is so important after all. As we moved away from the table, François murmured, the look on your sister's face was worth the loan of the dress alone. Diana texted that I should rescue you if needed. For the next 30 minutes, François introduced me to key figures in Boston's fashion community, boutique owners, magazine editors, and private clients whose patronage could launch a designer's career. I navigated the conversations with growing confidence, discussing my aesthetic inspirations and educational background with people who actually cared about design rather than dismissing it as a hobby. From across the room, I could see my family's table, where Rebecca appeared increasingly agitated as she watched my social triumph unfold. When François was momentarily engaged with another guest, she approached, her expression a forced mask of sisterly concern. Can we talk? She asked, gesturing toward the ladies' room. Privately. I hesitated, then nodded. Excuse me for a moment, I said to François, who gave me an understanding look. The ladies' lounge at the Fairmont was a sanctuary of marble and soft lighting, with a separate sitting area apart from the facilities themselves. Rebecca waited until another woman exited before turning to me, her composure cracking. What exactly are you trying to prove with this spectacle? She demanded, gesturing at my dress. Coming in late, making a scene, name-dropping this designer to everyone who'll listen? I regarded her calmly. I'm not proving anything, Rebecca. I'm simply attending the ball in a dress loaned to me by a designer who appreciates my work. The work you deliberately tried to destroy this morning. It was an accident. Stop. I held up a hand. My neighbor Audrey overheard you on the phone saying you'd taught me a lesson about staying in my lane. There's no one here to perform for, so let's not waste time with lies. Rebecca's face flushed. Fine. Maybe it wasn't entirely an accident. But you've been impossible lately with your internship and your design talk, and Mom and Dad actually starting to pay attention to your little hobby. My career, I corrected. What I don't understand after all these years is why my success threatens you so much. You have everything you claim to want, the corporate job, our parents' approval, the right social connections. Why can't you let me have this one thing? Because it comes so easily to you. Rebecca burst out, her voice rising before she caught herself. Everything you create, people love. You have this vision that makes people pay attention. I've worked so hard to be perfect, to do everything right, and you just sketch something on a napkin and suddenly everyone's impressed. Do you know what that feels like? To work twice as hard for half the recognition. For the first time, I saw beyond my sister's hostility to the insecurity that fueled it. The realization didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me understand them. Rebecca, I've spent thousands of hours practicing my craft. You've only seen the results, not the work. Nothing about this has been easy. I gestured to the dress. And none of this would have happened if you hadn't destroyed my original design. Your sabotage led directly to the biggest opportunity of my career so far. She looked away, arms crossed defensively. So what now? You're going to tell everyone what I did? Ruin me with the family to get revenge? I considered the question seriously. The vindictive part of me wanted to expose her actions, to finally make our parents see the pattern of behavior I'd endured for years. But another part recognized that such a public shaming would only deepen the rift between us. No, I said finally. I'm not going to expose you. That wouldn't solve anything. But this ends now, Rebecca. No more accidents, no more sabotage. I'm pursuing my career in design, and you need to accept that. Or what? She challenged, though with less conviction than before. Or next time I won't be so discreet. I have evidence of what you did today, and I'm keeping it. But more importantly, after tonight I have connections of my own. Connections that have nothing to do with being Richard and Eleanor Taylor's daughter. I straightened my shoulders. I don't need or want your approval anymore, Rebecca. I just need you to stay out of my way. Something shifted in her expression, perhaps respect. Perhaps simply the recognition that our relationship had fundamentally changed. Before she could respond, the door opened as other guests entered the lounge. We should get back, I said. checking my reflection quickly to ensure the dress was still perfectly positioned. People will wonder where we've gone. As we returned to the ballroom, I felt lighter somehow, as though confronting Rebecca had lifted a weight I'd carried for years. Whether or not she would respect our new boundaries remained to be seen, but I'd finally stood my ground. François found me immediately. "Everything all right?" he asked, noting Rebecca's retreat back to our family's table. "Better than all right," I replied. "Just clearing the air." "Excellent. Now, there's someone else you should meet. James Huntington, my investor's son. He's been watching you all evening, quite transfixed. Normally, I wouldn't encourage distractions during an apprenticeship, but networking is important in this industry." He nodded toward a tall young man by the dance floor who was indeed watching us with interest. As François made the introduction, I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. James Huntington was surprisingly unpretentious for someone from his background, asking thoughtful questions about my design philosophy rather than making small talk. "Would you care to dance?" he asked after a few minutes of conversation. "That is, if it's possible in such an architectural creation. François designed it for movement," I replied. "Dancing is encouraged." As James led me onto the dance floor, I caught sight of my family's table. My mother was watching with obvious approval. A Huntington was certainly a socially acceptable connection. My father appeared to be in deep conversation with François, and Rebecca sat alone, her expression unreadable as she observed the scene she had inadvertently created through her attempt to destroy me. The irony wasn't lost on me as James guided me through the first steps of the dance, the dress moving exactly as François had designed it to, like water catching starlight. Sometimes our worst moments truly did lead to our greatest opportunities. The remainder of the evening unfolded like a dream sequence, one where I finally played the leading role instead of standing in someone else's shadow. As James and I returned from the dance floor, we were approached by Catherine Montgomery, fashion editor for Boston Style magazine, who couldn't contain her curiosity about my dress. "I know Beaumont's work when I see it," she said, circling me with professional interest. "But this piece isn't from any collection I've seen. Is this a custom design?" Before I could respond, François appeared at my side. "It's from my autumn collection, Catherine. Not yet revealed to the public." He gave me a conspiratorial smile. "Madison is providing an exclusive preview." Catherine's eyebrows rose. "Interesting choice for a debut. Usually you reserve first looks for runway or editorial." She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "I'd love to feature you wearing this for our September issue. And perhaps discuss your own design work as well? Diana Ellington mentioned you're quite talented in your own right." I accepted the card, stunned by the casual offer that could launch my visibility in the industry. "I'd be honored." "Wonderful. Call my office next week to set it up." She glanced between François and me with new speculation. "I sense there's a story here beyond just a beautiful dress. Those make for the best features." As Catherine moved on to greet other guests, I found myself surrounded by a growing circle of interested parties, other designers, buyers from luxury department stores, and private clients who recognized the exclusivity of François' work. Each conversation led to new connections, new possibilities that would have been unimaginable just that morning. My father approached as the circle temporarily thinned, his expression difficult to read. "Your Mr. Beaumont is quite impressed with you," he said, keeping his voice low. "He suggested that your design sensibilities could bring fresh perspective to some of our development projects, specifically the renovation of the historic Franklin Building downtown." I stared at him in surprise. My father had never shown the slightest interest in incorporating my aesthetic input into his business. "He seems to think your understanding of how spaces flow and how visual elements interact could be valuable in the planning stages," he continued. "I've always considered that building a potential showcase property. Perhaps we should discuss possibilities when you have time." It wasn't quite an apology for years of dismissing my creative pursuits, nor was it a full acknowledgement of my talent. But coming from Richard Taylor, it was practically a standing ovation. "I'd like that, Dad," I replied, genuinely touched by this small opening. As the evening progressed, I noticed Rebecca had retreated to the periphery of the ballroom. Her earlier confidence diminished. Our mother, however, had seamlessly adapted to the unexpected turn of events, now proudly informing her social circle that she had always encouraged Madison's extraordinary creative gifts. Near midnight, as the event began winding down, I checked my phone for the first time since arriving. Among the texts from curious friends was a notification that shocked me. My social media accounts were suddenly flooded with activity. Jasmine had posted a photo of me in the Beaumont gown before I left her apartment, tagging both the designer and several fashion accounts. The image had already been shared hundreds of times, with comments speculating about the unreleased collection and my connection to François. "You've caused quite a stir," James noted, looking over my shoulder at the screen. "My sister works in fashion marketing in New York. She says when a Beaumont design gets this kind of attention before official release, it's a significant coup for everyone involved." I laughed softly. None of this was planned. 24 hours ago, I was putting final touches on my own design, never imagining I'd be wearing Beaumont instead. "Sometimes the universe has better plans than we do," he replied. "Though I'd still like to see your designs sometime." We exchanged numbers with promises to meet for coffee the following week. As the ball officially concluded, François' driver reappeared to transport me and the precious dress safely back to my apartment. "Remember, the dress returns to the atelier tomorrow," François reminded me as we said goodnight. "But the apprenticeship offer stands. We'll formalize details next week." I arrived home exhausted but exhilarated. Carefully hanging the extraordinary garment in my workspace, the same space where I'd discovered my ruined creation that morning. The contrast between devastation and triumph within the span of a single day was almost poetic. The next morning brought unexpected developments. My phone continued buzzing with notifications as the photo of the dress gained traction in fashion circles, even being picked up by several major style accounts. François had officially acknowledged me as wearing an exclusive preview from his upcoming collection, which only fueled the interest. More surprising was an email from François himself, outlining the formal apprenticeship offer. 6 months working directly with his design team, focusing on evening wear construction techniques with potential for contributing to the spring collection. The opportunity exceeded anything I could have hoped for as a student still months from graduation. As I was absorbing this news, a tentative knock sounded at my door. I opened it to find Rebecca standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Can I come in?" she asked, her usual confidence notably absent. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Rebecca entered cautiously, as if expecting recriminations. She looked around the apartment, her gaze settling on the dress form where my ruined creation had once stood. "I couldn't sleep last night," she began awkwardly. "Everything that happened, the way it all turned out." She paused, struggling visibly. "I've never been good at apologies." "That's because you've rarely had to make them," I observed, keeping my tone neutral. She winced but nodded. "Fair point. Look, what I did to your dress was inexcusable. I've been jealous of you for so long that it started to feel normal. Like that's just how sisters are supposed to feel about each other. But seeing you last night, the way people responded to you, not because you're a tailor but because of something you created, it made me realize how twisted my thinking has been." I studied her face, searching for the insincerity I'd grown accustomed to detecting in her apologies. This time, something felt different. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. "Because things worked out better than expected? Would you be here if I'd shown up in something from a department store and been humiliated?" "Probably not," she admitted with surprising honesty. "I'd like to say I would have felt guilty either way, but we both know that's not true. Seeing you succeed despite my sabotage forced me to confront what I've been doing all these years." She gestured helplessly. "I don't expect forgiveness or for things to suddenly be fixed between us. I just needed to acknowledge what I did without excuses." Her vulnerability was so unexpected that I found myself momentarily speechless. This wasn't the Rebecca I knew. The perfect, polished sister who never admitted fault or showed weakness. "I appreciate your honesty," I finally said. "That's a start." A tentative smile flickered across her face. "For what it's worth, you looked incredible last night. And the apprenticeship with Beaumont, that's huge, Madison. Really huge." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. As Rebecca left, promising to give me space while hoping we might eventually rebuild some kind of relationship, I realized that the events of the past 24 hours had transformed more than just my professional prospects. They had shifted the fundamental dynamic that had defined much of my life. The following weeks brought rapid changes. With François' encouragement, I found a small apartment closer to his atelier, finally moving out of my parents' sphere of influence. The feature in Boston Style magazine materialized, with Catherine Montgomery crafting a piece that positioned me as an emerging talent to watch, complete with photographs of both the Beaumont gown and some of my own designs. My father, true to his word, invited me to consult on the Franklin building renovation, actually listening to my suggestions about creating spaces that flowed naturally and incorporated artistic elements that honored the building's history while bringing it into the modern era. My relationship with Rebecca remained cautious but evolving. Small steps, a coffee meeting here, a text message there, gradually built towards something that, while not the close sisterhood depicted in movies, at least contained mutual respect. 6 months after the fateful ball, François hosted a small exhibition of work created by his design team, including 3 pieces that incorporated my concepts. Standing in the gallery surrounded by fashion industry insiders admiring my work, I reflected on the journey that had brought me there. The destruction of my original ball gown, an act intended to diminish me, had instead become the catalyst for everything that followed. Had Rebecca not sabotaged my creation, I might never have met François, might never have been featured in Boston Style, might still be living under my family's shadow rather than establishing my own identity in the industry. The realization reinforced the most valuable lesson from this experience. Our power doesn't come from never facing obstacles or betrayals, but from how we respond to them. I had transformed from someone who absorbed others' negativity to someone who used it as fuel for growth and reinvention. As I navigated the exhibition, accepting congratulations and exchanging ideas with established designers, I caught sight of my reflection in one of the gallery's mirrors. The woman looking back at me stood taller, spoke more confidently, and carried herself with the certainty of someone who had discovered her own strength through adversity. That strength hadn't come from the Beaumont dress or the opportunities that followed, it had always been within me, waiting for the moment when I would finally claim it. Rebecca's accident hadn't broken me, it had revealed what I was truly made of. So here's what I've learned through this journey. When someone tries to dim your light, you have 2 choices: let the darkness consume you, or find a way to shine even brighter. The people who try to sabotage you have inadvertently given you a gift, the opportunity to prove, mainly to yourself, just how resilient you truly are. Have you ever had someone's attempt to hold you back actually propel you forward? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more tales of triumph over adversity. Remember, sometimes the worst day of your life can become the catalyst for your greatest success. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength to transform your own setbacks into stepping stones.